Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part two of the drainage assessment, series, and we're gonna go a little bit deeper into more specifics on the design storm that this system was meant to mitigate, and also some other assumptions on the current existing condition as far as current runoff rates. So I'm going to start off kind of funny. So in the DEA, there is the appendix, which is this drainage assessment, and this drainage assessment has its own appendix, and so we're going to start kind of there. It's like the nightmare within the nightmare. It's like a inverted Inception series. Okay, so um, this is kind of a little bit more detail of how they got those numbers that we saw in the um, first part, and um, yeah, I'll kind of say what I thought. So I saw these numbers in the first table, and you might have noticed them too. What they call the corrected rainfall, and I was scratching my head. Okay, you can cut the basins any way you want, but why would the rainfall be different, right? I mean, regardless of how I parcel out whatever, if there's a storm, it's raining. Like, so the rate. I mean, the area is gonna change by how you cut it up, but the rate really shouldn't have. So I was kind of scratching my head on that, and this sheds a little bit of light onto that. Um, so what this process is actually in this modeling of this so-called rain event, the 1 hour rain event, they pull the 1 hour rainfall intensity value from like some reference. So for this site, it's 2.79, and on this column, you see it's fair. No matter where you are on the site, right? The rain's pretty consistent. Um, but what's changing the coefficients, right, based on if they build it out or not, I guess. And the other thing that changed, so that what those two things control is what they're calling this time of concentration. It's for the model, it's the how long it takes for the water to drain from one edge, like the furthest or whatever edge, to your drain point for that particular section. Um, and in this rational model, that matters because what they're gonna do is they're gonna apply what they're calling a correction factor. It's like a multiplier, and I think what this sort of does at a high level in theory is you're taking this 1 hour rain event, and you're not exactly sure, right, how the rain is falling within that hour. And what this correction factor does is it's kind of it's making the rain fall, like more rain's gonna fall earlier. And I think that the theory for as far as the formula is they want to maximize Q. They want to know what the theoretical maximum flow rate is. So they're going to try to boost the intensity so that in the formula and the math, so that they can sort of like make the 1 hour of rain sort of fall faster. And what that will do is it will make the rates a little bit higher to get a more conservative estimate for the rate. I think that's what that's for. So that's what creates these sort of like, I mean, they've been boosted by this correction factor, and then that's the I that's using the multiplier for QCIA. Um, so that's the proposed. I mean, that was the existing graph is the proposed. And it's the same in end result. This is where they pull that number from. So they look it up. Noah's rainfall or whatever tables. They'll go to the 10-year. They'll go for the 1 hour peak event, and they'll find that 2.79 that they showed. So I mean, the only thing I guess I wanted to kind of say about this is, yeah, this is a table, right? It chops up. Okay, if you have an extreme 1 hour event, it might drop 2.79 inches of rain. If it had an extreme 12-hour event within the overall 12 hours, at every 10 years, it probably could drop 7.17 inches of rain. Um, and so, in my mind, this extreme 1 hour event might be living, in a real storm. It's part of a larger system that is maybe not as extreme, as the 2.79 inches per hour, but it's part of a larger, maybe storm system or whatnot. in these models it's isolated, right? In these models, it's just a 1 hour event, right? So it's a bright sunny day, blue skies, and in time zero, bam, the storm starts, and whenever it drops the amount of rain equivalent for this 1 hour event, then they can, like, turn off the rain or whatever. So it's kind of a, definitely a modeled thing. And that is visible here. Okay, so what these are, this is one of the basins, B1, and on this y-axis is the Q, rate, cubic feet per second of flow. The y-axis, sorry, that was the y, x-axis here is time. And we have these three colors. One is the existing, what they're calling existing. One is the rates without any detention, and the third, the green, is the rates with detention. Okay, so I looked at this graph and spent a lot of time, scratching my head here, because it's showing us. Let's look at the blue without detention. That for whatever reason, right, the flow is increasing, and all of a sudden it hits this perfect peak and then just ramps back down. Okay, so what's happening in this model is that they determine this time. They're calling this the TC time, the time it takes the rain to get from one edge to the drain point, and they use that factor, the correction factor for rain, to sort of boost the amount of rain, to say, okay, instead of having a full 1 hour of rain where it's like just whatever raining at the 2.79 rate, we're gonna kind of pull that rain forward and make a lot of the rain fall earlier, and that will spike Q. It will make the rate look high, and for this model, that's fine. That makes sense. If all this model did was determine the absolute theoretical max of Q, then fine, right? You want to maybe bring the future rain, I guess, forward in order to boost the Q, and and get this. But the part that kind of why I hesitated when I looked at this was due to their proposed solution, which has a detention basin. So it's going to hold water. So as this rate normally would have just been going up and up and up. This is the rate at the output. So at the end of the basin, where the basin is draining into either woodlawn ditch or something. So instead of just letting it flow right to that endpoint, the drain point, the detention basin would hold some of it, so it reduces, right? It buffers, it slows down the rate. And at this peak point, I guess for this one, it was about whatever 8-minute mark. The water shuts off, right? The modeled rain gets turned off. So all we're seeing here is this is rate created from draining of this basin, right? The basin would drain, and then the rate of drain would reduce, and over this amount of time, then the basin would have discharged all that water that it held back, right? So you can kind of visually see the volume of water that's here that would have just been ramped up and spiking the flow rate is being held in the basin and being discharged here, right? That volume of water. So again, the detention basin doesn't, it just changes the rate. So the volume of water is going to be the same. It's just delaying when it hits that exit point. So the part that kind of caught my eye was because the modeled storm compresses the rain, it buys a lot of this time here, like 50 minutes or whatever, 40 minutes of like no rain, where now the detention basin can drain, right? So I kind of looked further into this thing, and the basins are built to detain this much volume, the water that it would have to hold for this modeled rain event, which is a 1 hour peak flow, but the 1 hour is kind of compressed into this burst up front, and then the detention basin is then sized in order to hold back that the burst. So that's kind of and the other part that's kind of curious, it's a modeling artifact. this red is existing, so like i- in the existing case, so if I don't build anything in the model, what will happen is you would turn on a less strong, rain spigot for a longer time, for 13 minutes, and then shut it off. And again, that has everything to do with the coefficients which drive that time, the TC time, which compresses the amount of rain that falls in this model in order to maximize the Q, which was the point, I think, of the rational method. So that is the event that this system mitigates and would protect, us, the residents, from. Um, um, the last thing I want to talk about, second part, I guess, was the idea that existing conditions had a 40% runoff coefficient, or zero point 0.4. They reference that DPP's stormwater management document, and this is that document. So I read the document, rational method, blah blah, compression factor multiplier, boost the thing, the rain, blah blah blah. Okay. Then I found this. For open areas, they're calling for C, coefficient of runoff, right? Which in the tables we saw in the assessment, they just straight up used the 0.4. It's like whatever. It's actually, the city, is saying that for open areas, the coefficient is actually somewhat variable based on the intensity. And I believe this site is in band 4. It's like a relatively flat, and it's wooded, so um, the numbers based on the intensity of the rain event would reduce. So if it's really raining really hard, like this is 8 inches per hour, it would be up here. Maybe zero point 0.4, was maybe fair. And again, for that model, because they boosted the rain, using that the compression or correction factor, the numbers that they got were in this range, right? They took the base number, which was here, 2.79, around here, and the model allowed them to sort of boost it, and so maybe then they're able to claim zero point 0.4. But if the rain were, in reality, if the rain were less intense at the site that's currently this open area, kind of wooded area, the coefficients, according to this DPP's guide, should be down here, right? Down here. We're under 0.2 down here. We're like at 0.15 or something, or maybe even 0.1. So what that told me, or what I got from that, is that currently existing under like normal rain conditions, in Manoa, that's not, it's not only is it not an extreme rain event, but it's not a like a compressed, multiplied factor rain event. In a regular rain event, rain falls at maybe less than 2 inches an hour. If that's true, and if this chart, graph is correct from DPP, then the current runoff is under 20%. So that means that we're going to be going from nominally under 20%, for regular rainfall, all the way up to the 70% when they build out those 9 acres. So, I mean, this idea that it's going from 40 to 70, I mean, I'm kind of arguing here. It might be going from like, regular rain days, it's going from like 15% to 70%. So, I mean, this is not a 75% increase. We're talking about, a 6 times. I mean, with like a multiplier, large multiplier of increased runoff volume, compared to existing conditions, because the current state, open area, wooded area, normal rainfall rates that aren't really extreme have a naturally lower coefficient than point 0.4, significantly lower. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap up this second part of the drainage assessment. Yeah, thank you for listening.